Hello and welcome back to Autistic After Hours. I'm your host Ashra, and today we are going to be doing a little bit of a different type of episode. We are going to be doing a question and answer, or a Q&A, where I answer questions that you all submitted to me on my podcast Instagram account, Autistic After Hours. And I want to start by thanking you so much for submitting questions. I'm not going to be able to answer all of them. I did receive a lot, but I'm going to do as many as I can, and I will answer them as thoughtfully and accurately as possible. I also want to say that I have not looked at these questions in advance, so all of my answers are my real-time responses. Therefore, I may make mistakes, I may misspeak, but I will be trying my best. As a reminder, all Autistic After Hours podcast episodes are available to watch on YouTube, so if you'd like to watch me speak while you listen, you can do that on YouTube at Ashra Louisa. I wanted to do a Q&A today because there have been a lot of new followers to the podcast, so I thought it would be a good time to have an opportunity for you to ask questions, for me to answer them. So without further ado, let's get into the questions. The first question is, have you lost friendships since your diagnosis? And the answer is yes, I have. Friendships have been lost. A lot of friendships have dissolved naturally because of my diagnosis. I would say the main reason for this is probably because since my diagnosis, I've learned a lot more about myself and what I need in relationships. I've learned a lot more about my values and my morals, and I've started masking a lot less. Because of that, there have been certain relationships that have dissolved, have just kind of over time fizzled out, because it was kind of like in my journey of unmasking since my diagnosis, I've really been learning a lot more about who I am and what I need and what I like and don't like in people. And because of that, I've evolved in ways that have brought me out of relationships. And I have also been more myself, and this has been jarring for some people because it's almost like the person that they knew that they were friends with is not really here anymore, because I'm such a different person now than I was, or at least I feel very different now than I did. And so yes, I've lost friendships, and that's a hard thing to talk about, and it's hard to go through, but it is a really important part of learning who you are and unmasking, and I think it's something a lot of us go through after diagnosis. Next question, any fidgets or comfort items you'd recommend for an autistic woman working in an office? I don't have experience really working in an office setting, but I would say any sort of quiet fidgets. I know one brand, I think, is Stimara. They have magnetic little fidgets that can be used quietly, so I would check them out. I also love Tangles, fidgets that are malleable and you can move them around and they're quiet. You can get them at the dollar store if you want to. It's actually my favorite stim toy ever is one that I've gotten from the dollar store, and it's a Tangle. And another one is, I really like Play-Doh. Play-Doh is quiet and something you can discreetly just kind of be playing with in your hand. I would also say, if you have any comfort items that you want to bring with you, like stuffed animal that you want to put on your desk, or if you want to bring a photo of something that you really like just to have that visual, I think that could be helpful too. Someone asked, does sleeping in a bed with someone else give you sensory issues? And yeah, it does. It's not easy to sleep in a bed with somebody else if you have any sort of sensory issues around touch and also around personal space, probably. I would say that the main issue for me was sharing a blanket. And so we just got two of the same blanket. We both have separate comforters. They're just two of the same Amazon comforters that are 100% cotton that I love. And so we just both have a separate blanket now because it was really annoying to share a blanket. I didn't like the feeling of it being pulled from me. I didn't like the feeling of being able to feel him move under the blanket. So yeah, it's definitely a sensory issue, and I think a lot of people sleep in separate beds for that reason, and I think that's a very valid thing to do, but if you are looking for ways to make it better, one tip would be getting separate blankets. Someone asked, are there any cons of being as open as I am? And yeah, There definitely are. I would say the biggest one is you're opening yourself up to criticism. So I can be as open and vulnerable and speak as clearly as possible, and people will still misunderstand me. And it's very difficult to be misunderstood while you're being vulnerable, because that makes you like double down on defensiveness and wanting to re-explain yourself. And unfortunately, when you're online like I am, you can't re-explain yourself and know that the other person is going to receive it at all or properly. And so yeah, being as open as I am is difficult because it opens me up to being misunderstood, which is difficult for a lot of different reasons, and you feel like you can't defend yourself or explain yourself, and that's really hard. It also does have an impact on my relationships. I have friends and family that watch my content that second guess themselves because they see what I talk about in my content and they worry if I'm talking about them. I do try to have as much separation possible between my real life and my content, but I also try to approach my content in a really authentic way. So it's hard. I am talking about real life in my content. I'm talking about my real life struggles, my real life experiences, and sometimes that means I am pulling from my real life relationships, and that can be hard and that can be a strain on my relationships. Someone said, I'm a new listener. I love the show. Have you thought of having guests on the show? Thank you. I appreciate that you're here and that you like the show. And yes, I do want to have guests. I eventually almost want to kind of transform the podcast into like an interview podcast where I'm having other autistic people on and I'm interviewing them. But unfortunately at this time, I have no budget for that. So it's just me sitting on my bedroom floor recording in the corner of my room. And that's not really a great way to invite someone to come join me. So if the podcast ever got picked up by like a broader network or something and there was more of a budget, then I would definitely be interested in doing that. Someone asked, how long did it take for you to feel okay after your diagnosis? And my immediate reaction to this is that my diagnosis is what made me feel okay. I felt not okay before I knew what was going on. So getting my diagnosis was what made me feel okay. It's what made me feel like I could accept myself because I finally understood what was going on. For me, the word autism, once I learned about it and once I realized that I was autistic, it didn't carry any sort of negative connotations or stereotypes. I didn't feel any negativity toward the word or the diagnosis. I felt only positive and only like it would serve to save me, if anything. So I did not have to feel okay after my diagnosis because it's what made me feel okay. I do know that it's very different for a lot of people, and it's very normal to feel not okay after your diagnosis. It can feel very jarring, it can feel very scary, and it can feel like you don't know what this means and what this is going to mean for you in the long run. And it's a big thing. And I would say that feeling okay and acceptance is something that comes with time, and something that can help is immersing yourself in the community, talking with other autistic people who have gone through similar things as you, joining a support group if you can, and just leaning into your autistic traits, accepting, learning about yourself, and trying to think about and figure out the things that make you feel good about your diagnosis. What are the things that you love about it? Maybe you have really intense interests that you love that are so important to you, and that is because you're autistic, and that is something maybe that you love about being autistic. Try and focus on those things while also knowing that maybe there's things that you hate about being autistic, and that's okay too, and there's room for that. But while you're on this journey of acceptance and understanding and trying to feel okay, I think an important part can be immersing yourself in the community and really exploring the things that make you who you are. Someone asked, what is one experience before diagnosis that should have been a dead giveaway that I was autistic? I think it was my strict rigidity and adherence to routine, and also my tendency to want to be alone. I think it was a combination of those things that were very dead giveaways. And in fact, they were dead giveaways. I think people knew I was autistic. They just didn't actually want to know it. My stepdad, I've mentioned this so many times, he called me Rain Man growing up. Rain Man is one of the most stereotypically autistic created characters in media. And I had some very obvious overlaps with Rain Man, which is why I was called Rain Man. And so people did know. They knew I had autistic traits. They just didn't want to know it, or they didn't think it was enough for it to actually be a real thing. But I think my autistic traits were obvious. It's just that people's perception and stereotypes held them back from actually seeing it. Someone asked how I went about explaining autism to parents, family, friends. I had a very fixated, intense special interest in autism while I was learning about it and while I was self-diagnosing. So I info dumped to people all the time about it, and in the info dumping they learned about it, and I would basically do so much research and then talk about that with friends and family, and luckily they were often receptive to hearing it, even if they didn't believe me that I was experiencing it. And I think a good way to do it, if people do not want to hear you info dumping about it, or if they're not being receptive, is to kind of like ease your way into it, maybe sharing like content that you see online that maybe like is more comedic or relatable, so they'll be a little bit more open to hearing about it, just kind of easing your way into it, but also keeping in mind that there are people that are not going to believe you. There are going to be people that dismiss you, invalidate you. The most important thing is that you know who you are. And if people don't want to believe you for whatever reason, sometimes you can't change that and you have to accept it, and you can evaluate the relationship from there. But that's something I had to learn the hard way. But I would say overall, I did info dump a lot about autism to friends and family, and that is probably how they learned about it. I also am a content creator, so they see my content, so that's how they learned about it as well. But I would say like my biggest tip would be to share like more relatable, maybe funny content with them to like ease your way into it so that they can learn it in a way that's kind of engaging and like funny, because sometimes that just goes over better with a broader audience of people. Someone asked if I enjoy being a content creator, if it's fulfilling for me, and why I do it. And I would say, yes, I do really enjoy being a content creator. There are definitely struggles with it though, and I have been experiencing some struggles recently where I feel very pigeonholed. I feel like very limited to what I can talk about, especially on my Instagram page, because if I try anything outside of it, the content just does not perform as well. And so it's been difficult trying to claim authenticity while also knowing that I often am making a very specific type of content because I know it will perform well. And I've been thinking about broadening and like, I guess just kind of trying to let go of this idea that it has to perform well, because I would rather be real and honest and not be so pigeonholed into just only talking about this one thing, autism. I also am a multifaceted human being. I have other interests. I have other things that I want to do and talk about, but sometimes it feels like I'm not allowed to, and I'm trying to change that, so stay tuned. Someone asked any advice for medication or replacement stim for head hitting during a meltdown. This is a really great question, and my immediate thought is like two things. I feel like there might be two purposes to the head hitting. One is like a pressure on your head, and the other is like releasing energy through hitting something. So I'm wondering if maybe like putting something tight on your head, like putting a hat on your head, or like putting your head under like a weighted pillow or something to have pressure on your head, and then having something you can hit, like a pillow, something squishy that you can hit where you're not going to hurt yourself and you're not going to damage anything else. Maybe that. I don't know for sure, but that's just kind of what came to mind initially. Someone asked, what are some of my favorite hobbies? I really like drawing. I also love smelling perfumes and researching perfumes. That's my special interest. And I also really like fashion and thrifting. Someone asked, how to accept that you have limitations other people do not? And that's a great question, and it's hard. It's really hard to accept that, and I'm still in that process. It is hard to see the things other people do and wonder and wish why and that you could do it too. And it's something that you just have to accept over time. Like, there's no way around it. And it's not necessarily that you're ever okay with it. I don't know if I'm ever going to be okay with it, but it is my situation, and so I've just had to come to terms with that. And I also like to recognize that there are things that I can do that other people can't. Like, I have an ability to learn a lot about a certain subject in a small amount of time and memorize it with detail, and not a lot of other people can do that. I have an ability to empathize and relate with people in unique ways. I have an ability to translate my thoughts into content, and not everyone can do that. And so there are a lot of unique things that I can do that other people can't, just like there are a lot of things other people can do that I can't do, that I feel limited by. And that's just life. Life is just accepting like who you are and what you can do, what you can't do, what you want to do, what you don't want to do. And it's hard, but it's fulfilling once you do. I talked in a YouTube video recently about how every time I say no to someone, it's like a celebration. And sometimes saying no is me showing my limitations. It's like if someone asks me to go to an event that I know will be overstimulating for me. Maybe I want to go deep down, but I know that I can't. I know that it won't be good for me, and that's a limitation. But saying no to that feels like a celebration because it feels like I'm respecting myself. So viewing you accepting and abiding by your own limitations, seeing it as like a celebration, as a form of self-love, of respect, of honoring yourself, that's a beautiful thing. Someone asked if I experience imposter syndrome, and I did for a while, especially while I was self-diagnosed, but I don't anymore. I have people all the time in my comments saying I'm not autistic, saying that there's no way I'm autistic. I literally just don't care anymore because what does it mean? It means nothing to me. And I think you just have to like become desensitized to it, especially as a content creator. Like, you just have to become desensitized to it over time, because the truth is that nobody knows who you are really in your mind. Only you know. And even sometimes you don't know. And so if you feel really strongly that you're autistic, if you meet the criteria, you have to know that not everyone understands what autism is. Not everyone understands the diagnostic criteria, and not everyone understands you. So knowing that and realizing that someone else saying that they don't think you're autistic, that is just their opinion, and it's a bad one. And that's it. So I did have imposter syndrome. I don't anymore because I've been pushed to not have it because of how desensitized I've become to people's hate. Someone asked, is it possible there's overdiagnosis because of social media / wrong diagnosis? And of course there's a possibility of that, but I think it's extremely unlikely that that's happening. I think autism is a very hot topic in the media right now. There's a lot of people creating content about it, a lot of people talking about it, and in the end, nothing really bad would come from people being overdiagnosed necessarily. There's nothing really bad that's going to come from someone saying they're autistic if they're not. A lot of people say, oh, well, they might use resources that could have been going to someone who's actually autistic. There really aren't many affirming resources anyways. I, as an autistic person, cannot get any resources. I cannot find any resources. So with there already being such limited resources, a couple of people wrongly assuming that they're autistic when they're not, or wrongly diagnosing themselves, it's not going to have that big of an impact, I don't think. I think something negative that could come from people talking about it so much is that there is this highlight on high-masking autistic people, on people that are usually lower support needs in the media, and that can erase and very much speak over those with higher support needs and those that are maybe non or minimally speaking, or have a level 3 diagnosis or a level 2 diagnosis, or have moderate support needs rather than low support needs. And so I think it's important for people like myself to really highlight those with higher support needs and those that are non or minimally speaking autistic people who are creating content and who maybe are not getting it as picked up by the algorithm because their content is not the traditional influencer style hyperverbal content. So I think that's a negative from the really huge amount of people talking about autism online. But overall, when it comes to diagnosis, I do not think the thing that we should be worrying about is overdiagnosis. I think we should be worrying about underdiagnosis. That is, without a doubt, in my mind, the way more important issue. This is the last question I'm going to do because I'm getting tired. What are some ways that help with sound sensitivity while eating meals with others? That's a great question. Makes me think of misophonia, and I have misophonia, and I personally use Flare Calmer earbuds. That helps me a lot with getting rid of like the really small, tiny, annoying sounds that bother me. I would also recommend noise canceling headphones because you can set them to certain settings where you can still hear voices, but you will not hear as much of the other sounds. So, for example, I have the Sony XM5. If I turn on certain settings that allow voice pass-through, it'll be noise canceling for everything else, but the voices will still come through, and that helps a lot. For example, I do that at the movies a lot. When I go to the movie theater, I get really, really, really bothered by hearing people eat popcorn and open packages, and just like human noises are really annoying sometimes. So I'll put my headphones on with that setting so I can hear the movie, but I can't really hear the people around me, and that helps a lot. So that is all the questions. Thank you so much for submitting questions. Thank you for listening. As always, remember, autistic adults exist. We deserve awareness, support, community, and acceptance, and I'm so grateful that you're here. I'll talk to you again very soon. Bye.